Imagine opening an ancient text and discovering a woman leading a congregation, preaching boldly, and even baptizing new believers. Now imagine that same woman's name being erased, her story buried, and her role rewritten by later generations. This is not fiction, it's the hidden history of women in the early church. And today, we're uncovering the truth. 1. The forgotten female apostles. Most people think the 12 apostles were all men. But what about Euodia? Romans 16 verse 7 calls her outstanding among the apostles. Yet for centuries, translators changed her name to a masculine form, Eunice, to fit the narrative. This was not a mistake. It was deliberate. Manuscript evidence shows scribes altering texts to downplay women's leadership. But here's the good news. Modern scholarship is reversing the damage. Eunice's story is being restored, and it changes everything. Euodia was not alone. Another overlooked figure is Phoebe, whom Paul calls a diakonos, a term often translated as deacon, but carrying far more weight than modern church roles suggest. In Romans 16 verses 1-2, Paul explicitly says she was a prostatis, a leader or patron, someone with authority and financial influence. Yet later church fathers reduced her role to helper. Even more striking is the case of Mary Magdalene, who early Christian writings depict as a primary witness to the resurrection and a key teacher among the apostles. The Gospel of Mary, a 2nd century text, shows her comforting and instructing the male disciples after Jesus' death. But by the 6th century, Pope Gregory I declared her a repentant prostitute, a smear that stuck for 1,400 years. The pattern is clear. Women weren't just sidelined. Their legacies were rewritten. 2. The power of house churches. Before grand cathedrals, Christianity thrived in homes. And guess who ran those house churches? Women like Lydia, Nympha, and Priscilla. Acts 16 describes Lydia as a wealthy merchant who hosted Paul's ministry. Priscilla co-taught Apollos, a prominent preacher. But as the church institutionalized, male leaders pushed women out of public roles. The solution? Look to the beginning. Small, home-based faith communities often empowered women naturally. Lydia's story is particularly revealing. Acts describes her as a dealer in purple cloth, an elite trade in the Roman Empire. This was not just a wealthy woman hosting Bible studies. She was a business leader funding the early church's expansion. Similarly, Chloe, mentioned in 1 Corinthians 1 verse 11, appears to have led a house church that reported divisions to Paul. These women weren't exceptions. Archaeological evidence from places like Dura Europos, home to the oldest known Christian house church, shows women's names etched into worship spaces as donors and leaders. The shift came when Christianity moved from homes to basilicas, spaces controlled by imperial male hierarchies. 3. The suppression playbook. Here's what they do not teach you in Sunday school. By the 3rd century, church leaders began systematically excluding women. Documents like the Apostolic Constitutions banned women from baptizing or teaching. Why? Power. As Christianity became Rome's state religion, it adopted patriarchal norms. But this was not universal. In Egypt, Ethiopia, and Syria, women kept leading for centuries. The takeaway? The church's tradition is not as uniform as we're told. The suppression was not subtle. Tertullian, a 2nd century theologian, wrote that women should dress like mourners and blush at their own existence. The Didascalia Apostolorum, a 3rd century manual, banned women from teaching, claiming Eve's sin made them unfit. Yet in the same era, the Acts of Paul and Thecla celebrated a female evangelist who baptized herself and preached independently. This tension shows the early church was not monolithic. Some communities resisted the patriarchal tide. In Syria, the Odes of Solomon, a 1st century hymn book, called the Holy Spirit she. And women served as Kayama spiritual leaders, well into the 5th century. 4. The Hope of Archaeology, a 4th century mosaic in Rome depicts a woman named Theodora as a bishop, labeled Episcopa. A fresco in Pompeii shows a female priest presiding over a ritual. These artifacts were ignored for years, but now they're undeniable. Every new discovery chips away at the myth that women never led. The turning point? When we stop letting later biases color our view of the past. Theodora's mosaic in Rome's Santa Prassede Church is just the tip of the iceberg. In 2016, archaeologists in Spain uncovered a 4th century glass chalice engraved with the name Sarah the Priest. Catacomb frescoes show women breaking bread at Eucharistic tables. Even more compelling are the Montanists, a 2nd century movement that revered female prophets like Priscilla and Maximilla. Their writings describe ecstatic worship led by women, until mainstream leaders branded them heretics. The evidence was always there, we just weren't taught to look for it. 5. The cost of lost voices. Think about this. How many brilliant female theologians were erased? How many sermons went unheard because their preachers were women? The church is poorer for it. But here's where it gets inspiring. Modern women are reclaiming this legacy. Scholars like Dr. Beth Allison Barr are unearthing suppressed histories. Pastors like Nadia Bolz-Weber are proving leadership has no gender. Consider Macrina the Younger, a 4th century theologian who shaped her famous brothers Basil and Gregory of Nyssa's ideas. Gregory called her the teacher of our life. Yet her writings were attributed to men for centuries. Or Egeria, a Spanish nun whose 4th century travel diary gives us the best record of early Christian worship in Jerusalem, but was nearly lost to history. The tragedy is not just suppression, it's the generations of women who internalized the lie that God did not call them. Today's revival is not innovation, it's reparations. 6. The original Jesus movement. Jesus broke barriers. He taught women. The early church followed his example until politics got in the way. The key insight? Christianity's radical equality was not a later addition. It was there from the start. Jesus' radical inclusion was not metaphorical. In Luke 8 verses 1-3, women bankrolled his ministry, a fact later Gospels downplayed. The Samaritan woman at the well, John 4, became the first evangelist, converting her entire town. Even Jesus' final moments underscore this. While male disciples fled, women stayed at the cross, discovered the empty tomb, and were commissioned to announce the resurrection. The early church did not elevate women, it simply followed Jesus' example. The institutional church's later betrayal of that vision is the real scandal. 7. The modern revival. Today, denominations from Anglicans to Pentecostals are ordaining women. Even the Greek Orthodox Church recently recognized female deacons. Progress is slow, but it's happening. The real breakthrough? When we stop asking, can women lead? And start asking, how much have we lost by silencing them? The Pentecostal movement offers a fascinating case study. In the early 1900s, women like Amy Semple McPherson and Maria Woodworth Etter led massive revivals, founded denominations, and ordained other women. Their secret? They appealed to the Spirit's calling, a loophole in patriarchal theology. Today, 60% of Pentecostal pastors globally are women. Even Pope Francis, while not endorsing female priests, recently admitted Mary Magdalene was the apostle to the apostles. Progress is messy but irreversible. 8. The lies we inherited. You've probably heard Paul forbade women to speak in church. But that's a misreading. In 1 Corinthians 14, Paul was addressing chaotic worship, not banning women. Elsewhere, he praises female leaders like Phoebe. The game changer? Context. When we read the whole text, not just cherry-picked verses, the picture shifts. Paul's supposed ban on women speaking, 1 Timothy 2 verse 12, contradicts his own practice. Scholars now believe the pastorals, 1-2 Timothy, Titus, were written decades after Paul's death, reflecting later church politics. Compare this to Paul's authentic letters. In Philippians 4 verses 2-3, he names Euodia and Syntyche's co-workers who contended at my side. The word synathlio implies shared struggle, military language for equals in ministry. The Bible did not silence women, later editors did. 9. The future of faith. Imagine a church where gifts matter more than gender. Where young girls see themselves in pulpits and ancient texts. It's not a fantasy, it's a return to roots. The most important point? This is not about allowing women to lead. It's about restoring what was stolen. This is not just about ordination. It's about reclaiming the early church's koinonia, a community where slaves and free, Jew and Greek, male and female were one. Modern experiments like the Fresh Expressions movement in the UK are reviving house churches where leadership emerges organically, often among women. In South Korea, women lead 70% of Protestant congregations. The future is not female, it's faithful to the origins we forgot. 10. Your role in the story. History is not just about the past, it's about what we do next. Share this video, discuss it, challenge assumptions. Because when we uncover hidden histories, we do not just learn something new. We change the future. The evidence is clear. Women led, taught, and shaped Christianity from the beginning. Their voices were suppressed, but they're being heard again. If this surprised you, hit like, and let me know in the comments. Had you ever heard of Unia or Theodora before? Subscribe for more untold histories. Together, we're rewriting the story.